Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I wanted to do an update on my Succession Dark Knight video and basically why I chose a lot of stuff, and basically for beginners all the way to people who are looking to min-max Succession Dark Knight. Wanted to talk about it, everything I use, gear, skills, artifacts, lightstones, and everything. And I thought this would be a good time because we recently got the new spots for Addons, so for all of you endgame players out there, there's some things you might want to tweak, and also Awakening, we are getting buffed next week, so I'm going to make those two separate videos after doing some testing, of course. So yeah, I thought anyone who is thinking about re-rolling Dark Knight or trying it for the first time, I wanted to show you just a lot of things, rotation, just like a basic general stuff. And yeah, we'll talk about easy stuff and then the min-max stuff. So I talked to quite a few Dark Knight mains, and then also like I've watched videos, just talked to people who are more geared than I am, and we've come up with a lot of different stuff. So with that said, let's talk about skills. So this is for Succession. There's a lot of things that in general, a lot of Dark Knights lock. So these are some of the skills, and you just lock these because they're not really useful, or they have like a double press where it will probably mess up your rotation a little bit more, or just, you know, the damage is not worth having over something else. So basically, you have everything. You just lock sudden. Some people have Hidden Strike unlocked. I just, it doesn't really matter. And then also Darkness Burst, quite honestly, it's just not that good. And then Evasion, you lock that. The Spirit thingy, this messes with your other abilities, so this one is just not worth it. And then Split Second, and that's about it. So those are the ones you lock. If you do large-scale PvP or any PvP anyway, you do rage transfers because you probably give your rage to the classes who have actual useful abilities. Unlike Dark Knight, you don't have anything. So anyway, with that said, yeah. All right, so what kind of gear do you use, and overall, what is changing? If you are not at Addons gear yet, you are DR. So is most other people. And if you're wondering, like, how do you know if you're DR or Evasion? The answer is if you have to ask your DR. And but real answer is the passive over here. They've changed it over the past year. And basically, if your passive gives, like, you know, it used to be like if it gives Evasion, you're an Evasion. But generally, you'll notice by a lot of your skills giving more Evasion than DR. So anyway, Dark Knight is DR. But I guess it's more streamlined nowadays at the end game where everyone has the exact same gear, which is kind of sad because back when BDO was like at its prime years ago, people would have more variety. So anyway, with that said, end game, your gear kind of looks more or less the same as everyone else's. I have a separate video talking about all the crystals I use, and you can watch that. I'll leave a link in the description. That's like a 40-minute video, but I talk about everything. But the ones that matter are basically, are you overcapped? If so, use this one. And you're probably wondering, oh, I don't have a Han crystal. If you have any sort of crystal from Addons, you should probably use it. Not necessarily for the damage, but the monster damage reduction plus 20 is actually very large. So that alone is a worthwhile usage. And this is for overcapped. So if you meet the requirements of any spot, what does that mean? Go look at any spot right here. You see this number? If this number is bigger than this number, green good, red bad. So yeah, that's about it. Artifacts. For the most part, I would say 90% of people should be using Vicious Shadows. It's overall higher damage output if you are doing more back attacks, which we'll talk about in a little bit, for which Dark Knight abilities actually do back attacks aside from just moving behind the enemy. If you are lazy and you're not locked in 100% of the time, target openings is better. But if you want maximum damage output, then Vicious Shadows is better. And if you're grinding Adania and don't meet the caps, then species damage is the way to go. Yeah, I have a video of all this talking about everything else. This is PvP. This is straight defense. I also use that in PvP. Current meta is basically everyone's a tank with 6 Jin crystals of like the DR ones. The meta right now is awful, especially if you're not a tanky class, and then life skills. Other things you could use is Death Blow. I would not recommend this one as much. It's kind of like an entry level, like you're actually a new player kind of thing. But crit hit rate is also a good option. And all out attack. This is for, I guess, mid-level or mid-geared players, because it gives you a lot of damage output straight AP. But the reason why we don't use it in like Adania and everything is because, one, we have the other crystals or not crystals, artifact Lightstone combo, but also things kind of hurt at the high end. So that minus 15 DR, minus 25 evasion, you will absolutely notice it. So when in doubt, Vicious Shadows, target opening, species damage in general. These are not bad options, like all out attack if you grind any spot that's not like high end Adania, and it's probably fine. Death Blow I think Death Blow is more for dosas and classes who don't really have high crit rate, but also 10% is an entry level option. Okay, with that said, we talked about artifacts, crystals. Gear is relatively the same for basically everyone at endgame. And let's talk about our skill rotation, and we'll also talk about some skills that you look at it, but you won't really know as well. So, first of all, let's talk about this one right here. So, where is it? Where is it? Hold on. Dude, everything. Okay, so like, let's say you're a new player or trying out Dark Knight for the first time. What are some important skills you should learn? Nocturne is a good one, because this one is like a go invisible for a second, kind of like ninjas do, and then you hit a directional and then it'll do something different, like a teleport behind someone or in front of them. So this one is like the unique skill for Dark Knight that a lot of other classes, every class has a unique ability. This one is one that I would consider for DK. And also, if you are a PvPer, Vadir's Dogma got changed. I don't think it's really that good, but the skills from last time we made this video, it's different now. So I think it's definitely worth talking about. All right, so with that said, let me see. Is there anything that is... I swear I saw something, but then I think it changes. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to show you the basic combo, and then we're going to talk about a few skills that, like, how you should use them. So, first and foremost, when you play a new class, not necessarily Dark Knight, you should always change your UI and try to put the skills lined up so it helps you. So basically, you look at this. The way you would look at this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how you learn your rotation. If you're new to any class, something I would recommend is, like, you know how you set your cooldowns, like right here? You could put a note on it. So, like, let's say you don't know how to activate this skill. It tells you this isn't, like, how to activate is F. You put like an F in the notes, and then it'll like literally have the key presses. I think it's a lot better to always learn the key combos versus literally putting them all on your hotbar. Just because I feel like you can animation cancel out of some of them faster. You can also like do 2 things at once. It's in the patch notes, like right now or next week, Guardian is a prime example of getting a buff where using a skill where, like on the hotbar, it was faster than key presses. That's getting changed next week for that class. So if you're planning on playing this long term, learning the key presses is overall better. Anyway, with that said, this is the combo. This is the cooldown bar, what you should look at. Basically, you look at the first, like up to these two, and then these are just like extras, like on cooldown fillers and situational. So on a dummy or like any person, you would look at it that way. PvE, in a way, also, your goal is to get as many back attacks as you can. So I'll do the rotation slower, and then I'll do it fast. So like first, you open with this one, because it gives you 10% attack speed, and then the add-ons as well. So let me do that. I'll show you the add-ons. So open, airstrike behind the enemy, and then you slanted balance and knock him down. That flow, and then you can move that way. That's it. That's the rotation left to right. Okay, so with that said, I'll do it again after, but also I want to talk about some stuff. So your goal for Dark Knight is basically pre-buff with everything that gives you attack speed, damage, and all your special attack damage first. So this one, Unveiled, 10% attack speed for 10 seconds. That's pretty good, right? And then our add-ons, what we have is airstrike. So you saw how we go from left to right, correct? So we buff ourselves up early with the abilities that don't do as much damage, following the big damage abilities once you're like fully buffed. So yeah, attack cast speed. You don't necessarily need to open with both of them, but in case you miss one of them, there's always two options. That's why we have attack cast on that one. Back attack, pretty good. Slanted was next under rotation, so we want to... You can actually change this one for a few other things. This is kind of like the flex skill for everything. And I personally like the movement speed, faster movement, faster clear, more trash loot, more silver an hour. Damage reduction, once again, also a changeable one. I have personally been grinding Zephyros Castle, which is the hardest grind spot in the game, and sometimes things hurt and I need plus 20. It's nice to have. Otherwise, you can just have literally anything else you want. Wheel of Fortune is one of your bigger abilities going down here, and the goal of all my add-ons is basically as close to 100% uptime as I can on all of these abilities. So attack cast speed, high priority, back crit, CC, damage, try to have that up, and then crit rate is very important for succession and all that stuff. So once again, instantly recovers 35. You could change this for like crit hit damage, crit hit anything, bleed, whatever. Once again, I also grind Zephyros Castle, and you're standing in lava basically most of the time. So instantly recover health, actually good. So situational. Lunacy of Vidir. This is a 15-second cooldown, so the skills are not going to be 100%, which is why we have 2 crits on here. So like by the time you get this back on cooldown, it's 12 seconds, and then you have to have 2 of them to have 100% uptime for the most part. And then same with back attack. This is a 15 seconds cooldown, and so this one is 7. Then hit that one 7. And then you could, once again, you could change this one for like another back attack to guarantee that 100. But different grind spots, different add-ons. Blooming Black Rose. This one flows very well with multiple abilities. That's why we have crit rate. We have to, once again, keep it 100%. And crit hit damage. You know, we could, for the most part, keep this one up. Spirit Legacy is minus 20 DR for enemies. Like, the reason why we have it on this one is because this one is your big AoE. So if this works from all classes, but just to clarify a lot of questions that people have, when you do the ability, it gives you the buff. This is not a it doesn't work on the ability, but it gives you the buff for your future abilities, right? If that makes sense. So like airstrike will not get the 10% attack speed, but all your future and following abilities in the next 12 seconds or something will. So that's why we kind of also have, you know, a mixed combination of things. So anyway, also when you hit things, you want to debuff the enemies with your AoE abilities. So like, for example, Slanted Balance only hits a maximum of 7 targets, and then Spirit Legacy will hit up to 10 targets. That's why we want to use all damage reduction on the 10 targets instead of 7. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's the add-ons I chose. If you were to change anything, you could change Slanted Balance for your any other ability. Like another option that I see people using is Enforcement. Also Twilight Dash, because this one is also short cooldown. Enforcement because it's a 5-second cooldown versus 5 over here. The difference is, the reason why I have it like this is simply because over here I open with this one earlier than I do Enforcement, so you want to have that buff earlier in the rotation than later. But once again, that's just my playstyle. Everyone could be a little bit different, so do what you want. All right, so here are some extra things that you guys should know as well. First of all, when you are doing Obsidian Ashes, like here's a mistake I see a lot of people make. Let's say you're doing this for the first time. You're going to watch this animation and you're going to notice it's a little bit slower, right? So this is how you normally cast it. You saw that wind up. What you want to do is when you use like Dusk and everything, which is like your movement abilities. So like down here, your Dusk abilities. When you do that, you saw how that fired off a lot faster. Once you use Dusk, it chains into it a lot faster. So that's one thing that a lot of people that I notice people do is slow casting. And if you learn to do that, and sometimes I mess it up myself, but like just fast cast it and then it'll, you know, you can start your rotation faster. Next thing I want to do is show you the Nocturne combos, simply because based on what you do. So if you read the tooltip here, when like the way it works is you hit Nocturne, you go invisible, right? And then you hit a directional key and it'll basically do something different based on directional. And if you look at it over here, so moving forward is super armor, maintain backward is forward guard. You can also flow it with A or D, which is also the same thing. And you can also flow it with Lunacy. But basically, let's say your Lunacy of Vidir is on cooldown, right? And you're just manual casting this one. You could, I'm going to show you like the different directions. So invisibility, and then you want to get back behind an enemy for back attacks. That's one option. But let's say, you know, you're behind an enemy already, or like, you know, on the side or behind the enemy, and if you go back again, you're going to be in front of them and you're doing less damage. So what you're going to do, directional on the side. So based on where you're doing it, it goes like sideways and the guard is different. So that's something I would say is probably going to be the longest to learn for most people playing Dark Knight. It's like, it's easy to put a bunch of skills on, and then learning to min-max it is probably the hardest part. So basically, watch the rotation once again. So like, look at how, when we talked about the add-ons and how like it'll line up over here. So opener. And that was it. Your movements, also the Phantasmal Snare along with dashes. but also you saw how it kind of flowed smoothly, and by the time you finish the combo, your openers are up on cooldown again, so you can. It's basically an infinite combo. But once again, I do think that Dark Knight is 95%. Like, just do what you want. Press the buttons that are on cooldown, are not on cooldown, and you'll be just fine. So if you don't like what I do, find something that you like, and it'll also work. Okay, so another skill that is Succession, not exclusive, but something that, I see people doing a lot. So, Ravage Rake, this is a pretty big damage ability. However, it does allow you or make you stationary for 4 seconds. So what does that mean? Like, let's say you're grinding a spot and then enemies are piling up on you and you can't stay still for 4 seconds. So let me show you how it works. Hold LMB, RMB. You're going to look at these two abilities. You're going to do 4 slashes. Oh, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes if you are grinding, those 4 slashes kind of seem slow. So here's what you do. You start it and then you hit down, and then basically you get the damage of both of them without having to stand in place for all 4 seconds. So if you look at the tooltip, you could just hold LMB, RMB and get both of them. But if you can't stand still for the full 4 slashes, to do the same thing is you hold it and then hit S or down, and functionally does the same thing. Next, what do we have? Skill enhancements. So for all of these, I personally like Wrath of Adir more than Shadow Strike. Shadow Strike does more damage, but depending on where you're grinding, sometimes the actual recovery is a lot more important. So basically, if you're a high end, if you're grinding a dangerous spot, once again, a lot of the stuff I have is because I grind higher stuff. But anyway, if you want maximum damage output, Shadow Strike is better. Wrath of Adir is the heal one, which actually kind of nice, especially for PvP. If you're in a situation where you just need the recovery, I think I like this one more. But Shadow Strike, more damage. Second one, I use Unveiled Fate because I see a lot of people doing combos with let's say you see this one, how Wheel of Fortune and then Unveiled Fate, it kind of looks the same. So I see people doing that one as well. And realistically, this is kind of like a filler skill when all your other skills are on cooldown, and let's say you have a extra second or two, you could pop your Unveiled Fate and then it's fine as well. But either way, I like it more than Obsidian Blaze because the Obsidian Blaze was kind of the animation just takes too long. Balance Strike, I don't particularly use this one that much. It's kind of like a filler skill, and it's only hotbarable, so it's I can't even flow it that well with it. And there's a few more things I wanted to talk about in terms of skills. So we talked about Ravage Rake and how to speed that one up. We talked about Obsidian Ashes and how to make your cast a little bit faster. One other thing that we want to talk about is Kamasylvia Slash. So there's multiple ways to use it. So you see how this is lined up with my Twilight Dash right here? It's because you can flow it really well. So it's like that. You could do that normally. But also, if you look at it over here, you could B during Twilight Dash or RMB. And then that's another combo. Another way to use it properly is, let's say your Twilight Dash is on cooldown. So let's say you're standing in front of an enemy, right? Charge up your Kama Slash, and then you dash move, and you can behind them and knock them down. So this one does require a little bit of a charge up first, but it's one of those situational things. I would say most people will just Kama Slash and then combo that one because it's 2 instant abilities. But if you're in a situation where you can wind up an actual Kama Slash and you want to move behind an enemy, I think that one's a lot more useful. So basically, you hold the button, and then you hit your mobility like a dusk or a smoky haze or something, you can move and then position yourself behind an enemy, which is very nice actually. Let's see, what else do we have? I think we talked about all the special ones. Enforcement. A lot of people just do enforcement like that, but if you hold it, it does an extra flow. So it's like you could also like do things a lot faster. And then, you know what's funny is this flow, like it's not really as straightforward as it sounds. Like, you know what SRMB in certain situations means? It means that if you're using it in Awakening, then it flows easier. I wish they made it more clear what certain situations meant for a lot of things. Kind of like pervasive darkness. Certain situations does not help anyone. And there's a lot of skills like for across the board for different classes that are just like, when you do this, you could do that. Does it tell you how to do it? Nope. You just kind of have to figure it out. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of one of those things where like this is a good example. It tells you exactly how you do it. Where it's like, here, push this button, how you can use it in 3 different ways. Ultimate enforcement, certain situations, that means nothing. So anyway, yeah, I hope you got a little bit out of this one and a few skills to like speed up your grind speed and your trash per hour when you're grinding, how to do things. Once again, this is one thing that a lot of people don't know. I'll show it to you again. Slow cast. Saw how that like winded up the sword like back and front. It took me a while to get out of that habit as well, because like when all my skills are on cooldown, I'm just like, oh, okay, I just press this button. But realistically, you kind of want to do that was faster, wasn't it? So yeah, you just move around. Some of your movement abilities as well. Dusk into chain, smoky haze. Smoky haze is kind of like a weird one actually, so you have to press that one. And then you get your movement speed buff as well. So do that one. And Shadow Bullet is one of those tricky ones that it's cool to do, but like in 2025 when all the other classes have like grabs and everything, like you're doing this, that's what Shadow Bullet looks like. It looks cool. It doesn't really do that much damage. It's kind of one of those filler abilities. There's another way you can use that one as well, is where you could do Shadow Bullet Air. Basically, when you could do that, but when you jump and you're mid-air. Is it practical to do it in the jumping? No, not really, because that's just an extra button input you're doing. So it's like you jump and then you like rather just do something else instead of just jumping. So one of those like weird movement abilities that you just doesn't really flow well. It's an outdated ability. They should probably just remove this one and make Shadow Bullet do more damage or something. So yeah, that's about everything I wanted to talk about. Let me just recap this. We talked about skill add-ons and the idea of all this. When in doubt, it doesn't matter what class you play. Things you want to look for: attack cast speed, very good. Back attack, crit attack, movement speed, crit rate, and all that stuff. And look at all your abilities and do they line up with your cooldowns? So for example, slanted balance, 7-second cooldown. Kind of want to keep these a cooldown. Of course, there are a few abilities like this one that's a little bit longer than usual, so you can't keep it 100%. That's where you put in another line for all of this one, and that's how it works. Extra tips for Dark Knights if you're using your BSR. In most cases, if you are grinding at a safe spot, it's okay to use your Prime 100. But if you're grinding in like dangerous spots where you have to use this. Let me show you how it works. Okay, so pretend there's like 10 enemies next to me, right? I'm gonna use my 100%. Guess who cannot move during that animation? Can't animation cancel out of it. 10 enemies are hitting you. That 100 to 0 your health in certain situations. Or if you're in PvP, people just grab you out of it or like CC you, do anything, and you can't move out of it. So most of the time I just have it locked. Hard truth is it's not really that good of a damage. Like 13,000 damage times 2 seems like it's really good. I've died a lot more times at higher end grind spots because I couldn't get out of the animation. So yeah, this thing's kind of terrible. And there's a lot of things I would like to see, like, hey, maybe add some more BSR abilities for Succession. But until then, we just rage, press Z, and hope for the best. But if you're grinding like a safe spot where you know you're not going to take any damage, it's fine to use this one. But depending on where you're at. So yeah, we talked about skill add-ons, skill enhancements. The only one that I think is a flexible one that you could switch between is Shadow Strike and Wrath. Depending on, do you think you need the extra HP or not? Or do you want fat damage? And important skills to start learning. Ravage Rake is either you hold it for 4 slashes, or after the second or first like slash, you hit S, and then you'll get both of these, and that speeds it up. And Comma Slash, there's multiple ways to use it. Situational, start learning that as well. Speed up your Obsidian Ashes by Dusk movement first, and then slamming it. Blooming Black Rose. I personally like using this one directly after Spirit Legacy because it just lines up on timers. That's more of like an advanced technique. So like this one, if I were to press this and then slam it instantly, that's how it works. And it flows with the timers a lot better than other skills. But ultimately, if you mess up and you're like, oh, I just use Wheel of Fortune and want to use that one, it's also fine. It's just the timers don't line up as well. What else is there? Nocturne is a situational one that a lot of people don't use as much as they should. It's one of the unique abilities Dark Knight has, and I think it's, actually good if you know how to use it. So yeah, I think that's all about the skills. And let's see, gear is for the most part, at the end game, everyone looks like this no matter what class you play. But if you're not at this point, just know that Dark Knight is DR. So if you're going for your Ator shoes and everything, it's blue, not green. And artifacts, just pick one of these two. If you can only afford one set, not 2 of them, Vicious Shadows will be better in 90% of situations or grind spots for you. Target opening if you're not locked into grinding about 100% of the time. So ideally you want them both, but Vicious Shadows in general is a little bit better, more damage output, especially if you know how to get back attacks like I talked about in various skills. And I think that's it. So Awakening DK is getting buffed next week, not necessarily damage numbers, but they're getting a lot of skills more for PvP. I haven't played Awakening in a couple of months, so I don't really have practice, but basically the concept is still the same. All your Awakening add-ons, well, they're different actually for Awakening, but pre-buff everything. Send your big attacks like Shattering, Seed, Cluster, Dark Nebula, and Spirit Legacy after your buff to do maximum damage. And then the core I would pick is personally Seed of Catastrophe, simply because this is super armor and is more protected than literally anything else. The ones I see other people using are Spirit Hunt, Shattering, and Spirit Legacy, but I think Seed is the safest one for most people. And then the same thing for you know, Awakening. To be honest, I would prefer Awakening DK over Succession. I think it looks flashier. That's why I played the class in the beginning. The hard truth is that Succession does more damage in both PvP and PvE. So, like, I feel like Pearl Abyss needs to up the damage numbers on Awakening, and it'll be a lot better. So anyway, that's all I have today. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And I don't claim to be the best player. I just, you know, picked up tips by watching other players as well. And I just talked to a lot of other people. And then, once again, I guess this is something I should talk about as well. Here are my Reforges. I have this on all 3. You're probably wondering, why do you have crit rate on 3 of them? And the answer is because exactly one ability, Ravage Rake Flow, has 40%. If you have all 3 crit rate, you can push this one to 100%. That's it. If you want a 93% crit rate versus 100%, you only need 1 crit rate Reforge, and then the other 2 you can have like damage reduction for safer grinding. I personally put all 3 because I also have the upgraded Kabuas, and then that also gives me damage reduction. So it's kind of like a trade-off. But once again, I'm at like a higher spot than most people in terms of gear. And so whether you have 1 crit rate versus 3, the difference is 10% crit rate for exactly 1 skill. And then maybe your opener with this one, like before you have your other crit rate damage is buffed. So let's say you don't have these used yet, and this is not on cooldown. 10% for this one, and 10% for the flow. That's actually it. Does it make a huge difference? Nope. But if you're min-maxing, it does. So anyway, that's it. All I wanted to talk about. I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic day. Peace.